Avery, whose show is this? Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge playback channel. Something that we're going to be doing a lot more of. I'm going to be continuing to tinker with over the course of the season. Okay, cool. So I just got a notification we're live on YouTube. That's good to know. Those boxes are checked. Can't quite see if I am live on Twitter, but I sent the link to Twitter. So worst comes to worst, you can just go there from there. So the audience is growing. That seems like a good sign. I should be seeing your guys' comments from both YouTube, Twitter, and obviously here on playback. So hit me in the chat. Let me know if this thing is working, if you guys can hear me okay. Should be able to, but you never know. And then in a second, we'll go ahead and get going. But yeah, quick note on playback. Basically, last year we didn't do any playback. I had a young kid and trying to watch games with him in the background or trying to help him go down for bed seemed pretty much impossible. So went ahead and made an executive decision on that front and chose not to do that. But what I will do this year, though, hopefully, is watch these games with you guys. So if you guys want, hit that subscribe button here on playback, and subscribe to the channel. And hopefully, we're working on some more minor details over the final month heading into the season. But at the very least, the plan is for me to watch games here with you guys during the game. And then after the game, we'll go ahead and go live and record our post-game shows here on playback as well, which will then also be streamed to YouTube and will be downloaded and edited and put out onto the pod feed in the morning in the same way that we would put those podcasts together when we were recording over StreamYard. So all of this is to say, let's go ahead and get going. And oh yeah, Reed, Pete does do playback too. Not saying to not check out his stuff, obviously. And I think eventually I'm going to talk to Pete, and maybe he and I will do the occasional crossover shows where I pop into his feed or he pops into mine. Yeah, we'll work that out. And yeah, like I said, we're to use Rob's phrase, which he kind of sort of borrowed from me, which I borrowed from a lot of people. We're building the plane in midair, mid-flight in this case. So playback though is something that I've always enjoyed. You know, I've popped onto Coach's Den from time to time, popped onto other friends' feeds and stuff like that. So All Access Lakers was a thing back in the day. And I'm going to try to bring that or add this to the community here as well. But anyway, enough rambling. Been 4 minutes already. Let's go ahead and dive on in with Rob Pelinka and JJ Redick's press conference from earlier today, and some of its highlights. I just basically am playing it directly from the Lakers YouTube channel. So, from time to time, I might jump ahead, go back, pause, all of that. But let's get through this one together in case you guys missed it.
For coming today. We had an intentional and productive off season that we're excited about. I feel like from a roster standpoint, we were able to address some goals, getting a starting center, which was something that we felt like was very important.
First and foremost, the jacket. That is a wild jacket. That collar is real high. He still does the double zipper thing, which I'm taking as a personal slight at this point. No, I've never seen anybody else wear a double zipper jacket. He has multiple double zipper jackets. That is I don't That is a crazy jacket. It's probably worth more than my house.
Adding a couple really good wings in terms of 3-and-D wings, Jake LaRavia and Marcus Smart. Clearly getting an extension done with Luka. In addition, having LeBron choose another year with the Lakers as opposed to entering free agency, all positive and productive things for us as a basketball team. And in addition to that, too, recently extending JJ's contract just to...
Hey, there's some news. JJ Redick I'm not going to lie. I had not heard that this was in the works at all. Um, he had this year and another 2 years beyond it on his contract. So I'm not really sure how long he's going to be, like how long this new extension is, when it kicks in. Did they scrap the previous agreement to extend him and maybe give him a raise? I'm not really sure about giving him an extension coming off of that playoff series. I normally when the home team gets routed, the team with home court advantage gets routed, the way that they did, that coach normally doesn't get rewarded with a brand new extension. So that was kind of interesting to me. I would also say that the benefit of extending JJ Redick, and it's something that I've talked about previously, but the benefit of extending JJ Redick here is it sends a message to potential assistant coaches out there that this cycle or this trend of cycling through head coaches is at least going in a different direction here. So, to what extent we, again, we got to hear about the details of the extension and what this looks like compared to what his previous deal would have been. But yeah, I don't know. I saw there were some people online pretty angry about it. I saw that there were some people who were pretty much whatever about it. I'm somewhere in between there. I don't think it's quite the right call right now. I thought he was really good in the regular season, but you don't extend coaches based off of regular season, and you don't extend Lakers coaches off of regular seasons. So, but I'll also say this. Something I've been speculating about quite a bit over the last couple of months or so has been the relationship to Luka Doncic that JJ Redick has. That Redick wasn't a Luka hire; he was a LeBron hire, and with this extension now in place, this now I think kind of makes JJ Redick a Luka hire too. So we know that Greg St. Jean spent time with Luka on the Slovenian national team or with the Slovenian national team. So you have that kind of relationship growing to an extent that it did. And now you have JJ Redick extended for at least now it would appear, I would say probably like 5-6 years or so. I would imagine is how long JJ will be under contract. I haven't gotten around to asking about what kind of contract this is. This took a lot of people by surprise based on, the conversations I've had so far. But JJ Redick gets his extension, and we move on.
Make it clear that he's, the basketball leader in terms of our coaching and on-court performance. So lots of business done in the off season. Of course, now the games will begin next month. Training camp gets going, obviously, next week. So just wanted to welcome everyone here. We're excited about the season, excited to work with you guys as partners, and here to answer questions, both JJ and I.
Jim Hill, CBS 2, KCAL 9. First of all, congratulations. Good luck this year. With everything that you have done and all the wonderful moves that you've made in the offseason up until today, how much pressure is on this team to win it all? Is the pressure more than it has been before?
Yeah, I think JJ and I are both so much about process, and we had a process. We were very methodical with what we wanted to accomplish in the offseason, and now we're going to dive into the process of having this team come together and be a great team. That starts on Monday with our first team meeting. So That's where we're going to really put our attention and focus is into the process of making this team great and starting by coming together as a group on Monday.
So I've noticed this as a bit of a trend that a lot of executives, and I even saw Matt Ishbia, right, owner of the Phoenix Suns, a lot of people are kind of reluctant to define success with wins and losses. And that's fine in press conferences. And that's fine when you are running through these press conferences with your coworkers and you're bouncing ideas for these press conferences off of each other. But professional sports, that is the meritocracy, right? That is the wins and losses industry. Remember how we all laughed at Darvin Ham when he said there are no wins and losses? Just what was it? Something in lessons. What was the W in lessons? No wins and losses, only shoot. I wish I remembered that. But yeah, I mean, Rob can say that they are process focused and they are this and that and the other. But if that process doesn't lead to wins and quickly, especially given the early slate that the Lakers have here, they are that process comes into question. So yeah, I thought this was an interesting question when framed by the number of other executives and coaches. Joe Dumars, right, was asked about the win now identity that comes with moving an unprotected first rounder for next season or for the season, and he was like, well, we aren't defined by wins and losses. We don't think about that quite yet. And it's like, okay, but you just traded away a first rounder unprotected next year. So that right there means that the wins and losses really matter. And I thought this answer kind of fell in line with a mental trick that a lot of these executives and coaches and such are trying to get away with, but won't be able to, I think, eventually get away with.
Yeah, I would just add. It's on. I would just add that I think there's always pressure for the Lakers. You come into this building every day, and you're constantly reminded of what Lakers excellence is. So that doesn't change, for me at least, year to year. Thank you. That doesn't change for me at least year to year. The other part of what
can't even get on
people probably would consider the outside pressure of trying to win, I think you have to look at your own internal standards. And I feel like we set those standards last year. This summer was a very productive summer for not only myself as a coach, but my entire coaching staff. I intentionally created an environment for my young coaches, for Bo Levesque and Lindsey Harding and Ty Abbott and Michael Wexler, all of them to have opportunities to grow, whether that was in pre-draft workouts, summer league, what we've done in the gym the last 2 months. And the guys, our players that have been in the gym every day since mid-August, getting ready for training camp. It's the work they put in. That's the standard that we've set here. It's the standard that we're trying to live up to. It's constant. It's no different year to year, day to day when you're a Laker.
Hey, one for both of you. If we could start with Rob, just thinking about the summer with Luka and the extension, and then I know you guys were able to fly over to Poland to see a game and to see him. How did that inform you, sort of about where he's at, where the team's at, how you build into the future with him, and of course, especially for starting this season?
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about with Luka's accomplishments with Eurobasket. I think the thing that probably stood out among many things for me is just being able to go and spend some time at practices with his national team and obviously going to the game as well. But just his overall leadership tone and how he not only led by example, but he was very demonstrative in the practice in terms of his expectations of the team, how they played, their togetherness. And I think just seeing that continued evolution and growth with him is not only a leader by example, but a leader with his voice really stood out to me. And I think it's something that's going to carry into camp this year.
So I think this is an important note to make, something that has been covered a lot in a lot of these profiles and long form pieces about Luka Doncic's transformation this offseason. And one of the things that he has said that he has really focused on has been leadership, maturity, and leading by example. And I'm really curious this upcoming season what it's going to look like when LeBron is there and he's going to try to lead, and Luka is there and he's going to try to lead, and how that do-si-do is going to go. At some point, because over the last 6-7 years, right, the Lakers basically kind of sort of decided how hard they were going to play by how hard LeBron was going to play. And that's really difficult. And I think that leads to a lot of inconsistencies when your tone setter is a 40-something-year-old LeBron James who can't go as hard every single night. Luka might be able to, right? With him in better shape, with him, again, talking about being a better leader, being more vocal, being more supportive, being more mature. Maybe if Luka is your kind of tone setter, now the Lakers might be more consistent from night to night in terms of energy, and maybe won't have as many of those really stupid losses that they've had over the course of the last couple of years. The reason that the Lakers had the whatever it was, 3 seed or 4 seed, I think it was a 3 seed last year. The reason they had that was because they actually went out and beat a whole bunch of really, really good teams. But the reason that they needed that tiebreaker is because they tend to play down to their opponent, and you just never know what you're going to get on a night to night basis. So hopefully, if Luka's kind of taking more of a leadership role here, you might get a more consistent tone set by your superstar than you have been able to. And again, it's unfair to expect a 40-something or even a late 30s-year-old LeBron James. I would have preferred at some point for Anthony Davis to be kind of the tone setter, but that wasn't how that played out. So that's another thing that I'm glad Rob noted, and that I'm glad to hear Luka has really focused on.
And then JJ, just coming off of your first year, and I know last summer was kind of chaotic and going right from broadcasting, and all of a sudden you're the head coach. What did you think about? Are there an item or two with all of this time that has stood out to you the most as you go into year 2 as a head coach?
I thought about a lot of things. You certainly reflect on the previous season, both successes and failures, and you do a lot of self-assessment. And that was really where I spent a lot of the first probably 4 to 6 weeks was on sort of self-assessment. But I would say the 2 words that immediately, when you ask that question, pop into my mind are philosophy and methodology. The philosophy of how we want to play, the methodology as a coach of how I want to teach that. And so that's where I spent a lot of time this summer.
Good to see you both. Hey, Rob. This is going to be LeBron's 8th season with the Lakers. It's going to be the first time he's in a contract year. How does that affect your team-building process as you not only have to take into account this year's roster, but the optionality of the team for years to come?
Yeah, I think we've talked before. The first thing we want to do in terms of LeBron and his future is just give him absolute respect to choose his story with his family in terms of how many years he's going to continue to play. He's earned that right, and he's the best one to talk about that in terms of how many years he'd like to play. But we were very intentional this summer in terms of the pieces we add with Luka and LeBron once LeBron opted in, making sure that they had the necessary pieces around them to be on a really competitive, strong team. And we built into that and for that. In terms of the future, obviously, again, with what I started your question with, first things first would be for him to be able to make the decisions he wants to in terms of how long he wants to play. We're going to continue to honor and respect that and let him speak into that.
You kind of answered that. I just want to put a point on it, though. If he was interested in extending beyond this year, are the Lakers interested in having LeBron James as part of the team?
Yeah, I think I've said before in a previous question, we would love if LeBron's story would be to retire as a Laker. That'd be a positive story.
And one for JJ, congratulations.
All right. I'm glad that Dave really kind of nailed Rob on that last one. I don't think Rob particularly enjoyed the follow-up there, but I'm glad that Dave McMenamin of ESPN did ask, just so we're clear here, you guys do want LeBron around past this season, right? And I think that's an important follow-up because, the reports are that the Lakers never really entertained an extension with LeBron beyond this season. And, if you ask people closer to LeBron, he would say, well, we didn't necessarily really ask for one either. And it's that weird, well, they didn't really commit, so I don't really want to make it seem like we're committed to it. That passive aggressive relationship that the Lakers and LeBron have maintained, unfortunately, for the last few years, basically since the Russell Westbrook trade, it has grown kind of wearisome for those of us who are paying attention to these things. But that is the most definitively we have heard Rob say, we want LeBron to retire a Laker. And I'm going to go back to this last summer on that front. And one of the things that I reported in writing on the show, all of that stuff has been how all of this noise, right? LeBron's hat when he was playing golf in Cleveland and the pictures that he took with the players in the Cavs facility and the statement, obviously the statement was rather loud. So I totally understand people running with that. But all of the breadcrumbs that we were trying to kind of pick up with LeBron, I always kind of maintained, both from a standpoint of sourcing, right? Stuff that I heard out there that the Lakers were very confident that LeBron wasn't going anywhere. But also from the standpoint of how much both sides need each other and continue to need each other. The Lakers, as a basketball team, really need the things that LeBron James brings to the table. LeBron, as somebody who is wrapping up a wonderful career, but also a Lakers tenure here, he needs the Lakers to be able to finish that Lakers tenure on a positive note. And I think it does matter to LeBron that he finishes on a positive note as a Laker. He also wants to play with Luka, and Luka wants to play with LeBron. One of the things that I've been talking about over the course of the entire summer is how Luka and LeBron were talking. And I said back, a while back that LeBron was in contact with people within the Lakers walls. JJ Redick will say here in a second that he and LeBron have been talking over the course of the summer. So yeah, I've always maintained and I've always felt like LeBron was not going anywhere. And I'm glad to hear it. And again, kudos to Dave for kind of working this out of Rob Pelinka. But it was good to hear Rob Pelinka say, in the most perfect Rob Pelinka, it would be great if his story ended it. Yes, we would like LeBron to retire a Laker. I think everybody watching would prefer that too, given the way the type of basketball and the caliber of basketball he played last year. And I would probably say the caliber of basketball he's probably going to play again this year.
Congratulations on the extension. I'm just curious, your comments on having that vote of confidence from the organization entering into your second year as head coach.
Yeah, Rob and I, we have a lot of the same philosophies on life, and one of the words we always talk about is gratitude. And so I think it starts with just a high level of gratitude to the Lakers, to Mark, Jeannie, and Rob for having that confidence in me. And it's not lost on me the sort of rarity of a first-time head coach getting an extension. Like, I recognize how fortunate I am to be with an organization that supports me that way.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to both of you. Rob, along those lines, why now for an extension? JJ had a bunch of years left on his deal. Why was it important now to extend that vote?
Confidence and belief. We think he's a special coach with a special voice that's really helping us to continue to define the culture of Lakers excellence. And which just wanted
Again,
to
he
make a
had 3
clear
years left
statement
on his
that
deal.
this is what we believe in, what we're going to lean into, and what our players are going to mold into as we continue to develop the identity. I think having long-term planning is helpful as we build this team and go forward.
And then as just sort of a matter of procedures, will you have access to all your players here at the start of training camp? Is anybody dealing with anything in terms of injuries that won't be available as you guys start next week?
Yeah, so the players, as you know, they're going through their preseason physical process as we speak. So that's probably a question best answered on the other side of those. But right now we're feeling good about our group and guys' readiness to play.
JJ, for you, I'm curious, having the offseason, what have you kind of thought about in terms of LeBron and Luka and Austin, kind of working those 3 together? You guys had to do it really on the fly last year. How did time aid in kind of your ability to sort of chart that out?
I think the word I would use would be share. I think in a team sport, you have no choice but to share the basketball, share the spotlight. I think all 3 of those guys have a ton of respect for each other's skill sets and each other's abilities. One of the takeaways, I met with Sean McVay in May, a few weeks after the season ended, and spent the whole day with the Rams. And I got about 3 hours alone with Sean, and we were picking each other's brains, and it was very helpful. But one of the takeaways from that was utility plays. That's something that is a football term, and I think every basketball team has those utility plays. And so it's the utility plays are plays where all 3 of those guys feel involved in some capacity, and they're sharing the court together.
Boom. This was one of my favorite quotes of the day. This notion of utility plays, the idea and the fact that he is now talking to Sean McVay or has that relationship with Sean McVay. Sean McVay is on Mount Rushmore as far as like coaches, in my opinion, in the NFL. And he's somebody who is a phenomenal communicator, obviously really good with the strategies and tactics of football, but I think on a more important level is very good at the human element of coaching. And that's something that, this notion of utility plays and getting everybody involved and making them feel like they are involved in these plays, that is really important for these 3 guys, because Luka, obviously, everywhere that he has been, he's had a usage rate of 30 plus, right? And or around there. LeBron, same kind of thing. Austin has gotten used to, over the years, having the ball in his hands in some key moments as well. And not just at the ends of games, but also over the course of games, so that he can have the rhythm to be able to function with the ball in his hands in those moments. And all of them have kind of whittled this skill set of being able to impact the game in that way, specifically, meaning with the basketball, and now asking them to try to impact the game without it in some moments. That's a big ask. It really honestly is. And the idea that going into the season, JJ Redick and his coaching staff might have on their minds, one of their top priorities is putting into place these utility plays where all 3 of those guys are involved, or multiple of those guys are involved. That is exactly, like, I'm not kidding. That was one of the things that I was really hoping to hear. Wasn't sure that we would hear it, to be completely honest. But as far as what it looks like, we'll see what that looks like. But the idea, like, we wouldn't even get the chance to see what it looks like if it wasn't already at the forefront of JJ and his staff's mind going into training camp and going into preseason and then eventually going into the regular season. I honestly thought going into this year that the most important development or the biggest step forward that the Lakers can take as a team would come on the offensive side of the ball by way of LeBron and Luka being involved together, and Austin also as well. If we didn't get that, then it almost wouldn't matter what personnel changes the Lakers would make. Their ceiling would still be too low. But if we are able to see them raise their ceiling, through some of these, again, his term, utility plays, that is really important. That is really, really important.
Digging in with the LA Times, JJ, following up on what you said earlier about philosophy and methodology. What were kind of your takeaways of where you are as a coach early in your career in terms of those two things, philosophy and methodology?
Philosophy, I think it's just continued growth for how I want this team to play. And I want to be clear, that's not how I want to play. Like, a job as a coach is to figure out what is best for the group. And I think methodology, that was a lot in the self-assessment, and then a lot in talking with Sean McVay, spending some time with Tom Brady this summer. It was about figuring out what's the best way. How did Belichick do this? How does Sean do this? Obviously talked to a ton of NBA coaches, was fortunate to spend 2 days in Chicago a couple weeks ago, and picked a bunch of coaches' brains on some things. So again, it's really just about continued growth for myself, for my staff, and I feel like we all are in a good place to serve this basketball team and our players.
How did those connections start with Sean McVay and Tom Brady? Or were those new this season, or have you done something similar before?
So prior to being hired by the Lakers, I spent a lot of time with coaches, and Sean was one of those guys outside of basketball that I developed a relationship with. Very close friends with Andrew Whitworth, so Whit hooked us up and talked with him a bunch. We wanted to get together prior to last season, but moving and getting the kids in school, it was just we didn't find a day. So feel lucky I got to do that with him.
Rob, JJ, thanks for the time. Rob, I want to start with you. Dave mentioned LeBron obviously could be a free agent after the season, expiring contract. Over half your roster could be free agents by next summer. Just wondering, how do you, and you've mentioned the flexibility, that being a priority, how do you anticipate that playing out? Or I guess what are the hopes of that dynamic going into training camp, going into the season, and how that plays out with so much flexibility and, guys,
Yeah, I think the key is, I like the word optionality better, I think, than flexibility. I think we've all seen the impact
everybody.
that this new NBA, CBA system, or relatively new system, has had on teams. And one of the things that's really hard is if you get trapped above the aprons, over the aprons, deep into them, you lose your optionality. And we, again, have been very disciplined and intentional on how we've put the roster and cap together to lean into that optionality. Now, that said, I don't see optionality as a word that applies to the distant long-term future. That optionality could be now. It could be if there is a move to be made, we have the optionality to look at it, study it, and decide if it helps our team. That said, JJ and I have a high level of confidence in this group. And I think early in the season, we're going to get a sense of where some of the needs might arise. I think as a general rule, we've talked before, you like 20, 25 games to kind of see what the...
All right, so quick thing here, because this annoys me. One of the more crucial elements of an elite front office is vision, foresight, obviously execution stuff. I think Rob is fine as far as executing things, but it shouldn't take 20 to 25 games for you to realize, oh, yeah, that's right, we need blank, right? Like, it shouldn't take a quarter of a season for you to be like, you should be able to look at a roster and like the Lakers right now, they need a defender who can more capably guard twos and threes. Right now, the only players on the roster who can, viably do that in an impactful way are Marcus Smart, who has questions facing coming off of a couple of down years. There's a reason he was available via buyout in the first place. And Jared Vanderbilt, who wrecks your offense. And outside of that, the Lakers are maybe hoping that Gabe Vincent does it. He's too small. Maybe you're hoping that Austin Reeves does it. If that's what you're hoping for, then like that should be that you should know going into the season. All right, this is a potential hole. This will need to be addressed. This will need to be addressed. And this idea that, well, we're going to go through 20, 25 games, and then at that point, really, really take stock. It's like, no, where's the vision? Where is the team wide identity here? And one of the things that I've talked about a lot over the course of this summer, and frankly over the extent that Rob Pelinka has been in charge, is his kind of method to running the team and frankly staying employed is hear from his bosses what they would like and then execute that. And then he has kind of the tacit, explanation or explainer if things don't go well, of like, well, we all wanted that. And it's kind of hard to hold me accountable for that when we all wanted it, and that's why I get a little frustrated when I hear, we're going to go through a quarter of the season and then, in December we'll rethink things. And it's like, well, okay, but that would mean that in all likelihood for a quarter of your season, you're playing with a roster that isn't as good as it needed to be at the beginning of the season. And that's where I don't think like that's an area where I think Rob Pelinka and this entire front office needs to really rethink their approach here and actually, put some stones behind real vision, real culture, real identity in building out this roster.
The makeup of your team looks like and see where it's at, and then you start evaluating those roster moves. But we feel good about the optionality. At the same time, we really like a lot of the players that are on short-term contracts, and you could use that optionality to keep those players as well. So we'll continue to evaluate.
And then JJ, for you, going into training camp last year, you had
optionality so far
determined and revealed the starting lineup going into the season. I was wondering if you'd made the same determination this season or going to this season, and if so, if you'd be willing to share it.
I haven't spent that. It's not that important to me. I haven't spent a ton of time thinking about it. We certainly have a number of players, you call it 7 or 8, that are starter level players in the NBA.
I'm calling bullshit. This idea that he hasn't thought about the starting lineup or that it isn't important. It is important. The group that you decide on as your starting group, that group plays more minutes together than any other combination of 5 players by a lot. Usually it's at least like 2 or 3 times more minutes together than any other lineup. It's the only lineup that has designated moments together when you know for sure that they are definitely going to be on the court at that time together. You're also going against the best punch that the other team can throw. And, in far more often than not, the best punch that the other team can throw. That's the other team's best lineup that they outline as the group that they want to play 2 or 3 times more than any other group that they can put on the floor together. So the idea that like this is not something he's thought about, I don't buy even a little bit. Or even worse, if that is the case, and I'm like, well, then what the hell? Like, that would make me nervous. What I was kind of hoping for was, you knew that this was going to be asked, and this is one of the things that drives me kind of nuts from a PR perspective. This question is coming. You have to have something better lined up than, oh, I don't know, I haven't really thought about it. No, like that's not going to fly. It's coming. You have to be ready for it. This is the kind of question that here's your answer, JJ. This year we're really trying to implement a culture of competition and competitiveness, and We want to get into training camp and we want to see who looks best with whom and see which combinations work the best and then go into the season with that in mind. And by the time we get out of training camp and by the time we get to some of these preseason games and we get some of these combinations together on the floor, we'll make our call by the beginning of this upcoming season. There you go. That sounds a hell of a lot better than, I don't know. It's really not that important. It is important. Of course it's important. Why would it not be important?
I do know this. I did say that last year. And that starting lineup started 8 games together to start the season, and we started 24 lineups throughout the year. So not going to spend too much time banging my head against a wall on that before we have a practice.
Hey, Rob and JJ. When you guys first acquired Luka, obviously there was a lot of shock. That transformed to determination and maybe even defiance now. Over the past couple of months with him, what have you learned about him during that metamorphosis?
I think probably the word that stands out to me the most is genuine. He's just an incredibly genuine person, and the fact that he displayed to all of us right here when he first got traded a sense of shock just shows that there's nothing fake or pretend, about him. He's just a genuine guy, and I think that helps. That's a great leadership quality when people feel like they really know your heart and what you think and your beliefs. And so the more time you spend with Luka, the more genuine and impactful he is. So that was something that really developed with our touch points over the offseason.
Hi, guys. Gerard Moncured from Fox 11. With Luka's extension, which obviously when you acquired him, we all knew that was the goal. LeBron is still here and might be here in the future. I'm just curious, have there been any conversations between you guys and LeBron about the transition that we are seeing taking place from this kind of going from LeBron's team to Luka's team?
Yeah, I mean, I can handle that. I mean, I talked to LeBron fairly frequently and had 2 great in-person meetings with him. One, he finally made it out to the Hamptons. So he and I had dinner in Sag Harbor right around free agency, and then was able to spend some time with him here in LA a couple weeks ago. And I came away from that thinking that he's in a great spot mentally, and know he's going to give us his absolute best.
All right. So I again, I don't want to belabor this point too much, but one of the things that I talked about over the summer was the industry of LeBron speculation and the industry of reading between the lines. And look, I'm just as guilty of it as anybody. I enjoy doing that stuff. I think it's really fun, just as like a separate hobby or whatever. But you also, while you're doing that, have to be able to take a look around at the context within some of those actions and within some of those subtweets and subliminal messages and actual messages, right? In the case of what Rich Paul sent to ESPN when LeBron opted in. But yeah, I think it remains very, very noteworthy that LeBron needs the Lakers as much as the Lakers need him. And that relationship, while I won't go so far as to call it frayed, but I do think there are some scuff marks on it. While that relationship, has maybe been in better places before, I do think, everybody, they're all adults and they can all recognize, all right, let's all make this. Because look, what is he going to do? Is he going to pout? He's going to go into one of his final seasons in the NBA and pout through it because he's not the center of attention. That was never going to happen. And it was never going to, the Lakers were never going to buy him out, and they were never going to trade him for pennies on the dollar at the onset of a Luka Doncic era, while they're trying to convince him to sign an extension. So Yeah, LeBron, I never thought was going anywhere. I thought there was it provided some real insight into the industry of LeBron speculation, that it does, it does pay bills and it does feed families, but we also got to be realistic while we do it.
Hey, JJ. Over here. Hi. I know that you spent time with skinny Luka when he signed his contract. But we saw such a huge change with Nikola Jokic around 2020, where he really just changed all his eating habits, he changed his diet, and he's been able to maintain that since, and it really rocketed him to the position he's in. What do you expect now that Luka has talked about how he's transformed his body? What do you expect him be able to do on the court differently and contribute to the team in a different way this season? And how much of a sense do you get about how long-term this is for him?
I get the sense from talking to him all summer, spending time with him, not only just here, but at the Backstreet Boys, that this is his life now. This is his routine. This is just a daily commitment to the new standard that he's set for himself. His excitement level, not just in what he hopes the season will be, but his excitement level in embracing this new standard was very high. Every time I've talked to him, when I saw him in Vegas, and then you see him play in Eurobasket, and he's moving better, he's defending, like all the things that you saw at the end of last year, where the layoff from the calf injury, whatever emotions he was going through post-trade, like it had an effect on him. So again, it goes back to what I just said about LeBron. I expect the best version of Luka, and it's my job as a coach to bring that out on a daily basis. Well, I would say this: we've asked all our guys to be in championship shape, and not starting on Tuesday. And so the commitment level across the board from our team has been very high this summer. We've had organized workouts. The guys have played pickup nearly every day. We've added conditioning at the end. They've all been committed to it. But I think for me, that's probably the biggest thing. It's not a basketball thing that he can or can't do. It's just all of us being in elite shape.
Hey guys, good to see you. Rob, to start with you, earlier in the summer there was some reporting around you guys being more forward-looking with how you wanted to build the roster and the contracts, and obviously you just spoke to having that optionality and potentially making a move sooner. There's a recent report about you guys potentially kind of pivoting post-Luka extending and just spending some time with him and kind of him showing that it was worth potentially investing more in this roster. So if that is true, can you speak to just the process of kind of where maybe you guys were earlier in the offseason compared to where you are now?
Yeah, I think some of the words you used are maybe create a narrative. For us, the goal is the same as always. It's to build a championship team. And so I don't think there has been a pivot or a shift. I think that we were locked into getting to a place of optionality so we could address things both now or keep that optionality for the future, but the goal remains the same.
You were
is to
taking drinks every
put
time
Lakers players on the court that can try to win this team a championship, and that's what we're committed to. And we feel like we have the optionality that if we're not seeing that in the first 20 to 25 games, that we can look to make moves to meet that goal.
And then JJ, schematically, what just with the new pieces, adding in DeAndre and Marcus and Jake, what are some of the changes or refinements that you're thinking about on both sides of the ball?
Well, hopefully you'll find out in the preseason.
All right, so a couple of interesting questions there, or answers there. So the idea, so narrative has become a kind of coverall word in sports, especially, where oftentimes it is used to describe a question or coverage or a story that's, a fan base or a player or a coach, or in this case, Rob Pelinka doesn't like. And I don't think he really liked that question from Jovan about the offseason and the pivot and the reported pivot. So here's basically what Jovan is alluding to. Early on in the offseason, I reported that the Lakers and the Miami Heat had conversations about Andrew Wiggins. I believe Jovan also reported it at the time. Then obviously those talks didn't go anywhere. I said at the time that they weren't close, but that was the type of target that people around the league were linking the Lakers to, and that I had heard the Lakers have had internal conversations with, and then eventually external conversations about. So then obviously you go through basically the whole offseason. They finished with the roster that we currently see now. And after EuroLeague, we get a couple of reports from Mark Stein and from Dan Wojcicki, both saying, well, the Lakers, they were kind of focused on the future before. Now they are more willing to go all in. And I thought the timing of it was interesting. And I thought the timing of it was, as I said in yesterday's Great Western Forum pod, the timing of it was beneficial to a team that doesn't like to enter seasons without a first round pick in their back pocket. And so I don't know. I said when when Wojcicki and when Stein's reporting came out that I didn't necessarily buy that now all of a sudden they were interested in Wiggins, but they weren't interested in Wiggins before. The explanations for it didn't make any sense. One of the explanations was that, well, Luka signed his extension, and now that they have that certainty figured out, now they're more willing to pay on stuff for the future. But the Lakers entered the offseason knowing that Luka was going to sign his extension. He signed that extension the first thing in the first morning of the first day that he could possibly sign it. So I don't think there was ever any drama or any stress that he wouldn't sign it going into the summer. So I don't necessarily buy that explanation. And then there was the other explanation was like, well, the Lakers saw Luka play in EuroLeague and boy, he looked great. And it's like, okay, you're basing what you did or didn't do in the offseason on how good Luka looked against Finland. That doesn't make much sense either. You either think Luka's good or not. And so the explanations for that version of the story never really added up to me, which might be some of what Rob is kind of talking about here, right? Where it's like, all right, that's a version of the story that maybe you build through reporting or by combining the reports and stuff like that. And that might not actually be how it goes. But I think in reality, what it kind of comes down to is Rob likes to enter seasons with one first round pick in his back pocket. He also likes to wait until later in the season when prices drop a little bit and you can trade for, say, like last year, right? They traded for Dorian Finney-Smith without giving a first round pick. Whereas the previous offseason, Brooklyn was asking for a starter, a first rounder, and some draft compensation beyond that. So like, I think where I kind of land on this situation, and this is through some speculation, this is from talking to people as well, is that the Lakers made calls to a few teams about wings. One of those teams being the Miami Heat. They didn't like the price that Miami outlined for them, which at the time when I first reported it was like Rui, Dalton, and expiring. They prefer Gabe and a first. And the Lakers basically said, you can, have Rui or the first. And I think ideally, the Lakers view Wiggins as somebody they would like to get without giving up Rui. The Lakers do need to add talent. And when you trade away some of the talent to get the talent, yeah, you can take a step forward in terms of fit and maybe even in overall talent. But I think the Lakers would prefer to go into the season and trade for whether it's Wiggins or a different wing at some point during the season after after prices drop and at a time when they can get away with getting a player like that without giving up Rui and a first round pick.
Hey, Rob and JJ. With what you're talking about with the roster you assembled this summer, in what ways do you think this current group can make things relatively easier for LeBron and Luka?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit to it and then let JJ address this. I mean, first and foremost, having a true center that is both great in the short roll when you have DeAndre Ayton in pick and rolls with Austin Reeves, Luka, and LeBron. His ability to catch passes in the short roll, we've already seen some of that in sort of the player workouts that have been going on.
About Rui,
he's also a lob threat. So
answer.
Just adding that dimension, his size is very real. And then
I think it's here.
There's a confidence in his spirit and a comfortability with.
I think Rui's future looks like with the Lakers.
Yeah, like JJ said, just seeing his growth from the time we traded for him, it feels like every season he's just gotten a little better at something. And just being around him the last couple of weeks, you can tell there's a confidence in his spirit and a comfortability with this place and JJ and his staff. It just exudes out of Rui. So I think this year is going to be another jump up for him. And he's a really, really important player for our team.
Hey, JJ. Obviously, getting DeAndre in the offseason was a big acquisition. Just would love to hear you just expand on how important of a role he's going to have, how critical he's going to be to this.
Of Marcus, what's the hope for what he's going to add to this team?
Seen about him, because I know a lot of times during the summer he's very low key, but I know he's been in the lab.
If a transaction comes to us that leads to sustained Lakers excellence and puts us in a position.
I'm going to go back to
if
this
it brought a sustainable Lakers excellence. Obviously, that happened with the acquisition.
All right, so I believe this is my dude Edwin asking a question about what the bar is to include draft compensation, and I think this was kind of word vomity. This was kind of copy pasta, but here's Rob talking about the what it would take for the Lakers to include first-round draft capital moving forward.
Of Luka, is that still the kind of player that's required for a first-round pick to be traded away, or has the market or needs on the roster changed that?
I think I would just say it again. If a transaction comes to us that leads to sustained Lakers excellence and puts us in a position to increase our odds of winning a championship, we would put future draft capital in to make that move.
JJ, in looking back at the things you learned during your first season coaching, were there elements like pacing yourself through an entire season emotionally?
For you guys, since you acquired him, have you guys had any?
All right.
Oh, it's actually the opposite of awkward.
All right, last question that I'm going to hit on here is from Woiki asking
one
about
quick one
Rui's
and
future.
kind of a bigger picture question for both of you, Rob. In regards to Rui, he is extension eligible, and he's been a very good player for you guys since you acquired him. Have you guys had any extension conversations, and how does that sort of fit in with the optionality that you're also trying to create?
Yeah, so I think the best thing to say is we feel strongly about Rui, and we don't make it a practice when we're in discussions with someone on a contract to talk about it. So I'll just kind of leave that one to the side.
All right, so I took this question to mean, now people on Twitter took it a different way, but I took this to mean he says that the team values Rui. That is something that I've heard consistently. Rui has some fans very, very high up in the organization, and the bar for trading Rui has always been pretty high. So Rui, again, like Woiki says, has been extension eligible all summer, and yet at no point this year have I heard about any extension talks between him and the team. Now, that doesn't mean that they didn't take place. I don't know everything. I didn't know about the JJ Redick extension. So take that for what it is. But we know that the Lakers offered Austin Reeves his max extension, and he turned it down because it is below market value. In this case, the Lakers have. I haven't heard that the Lakers have offered Rui an extension, but Rob saying that A, the Lakers value Rui, and B, that they don't like to talk publicly about negotiations or conversations that they're having with players about contracts, that to me signaled that the Lakers and Rui are in talks on an extension. How close they are, where that divide is, where they would wind up, that remains to be seen. That's going to be something that I'm looking into. But that is how I took Rob's answer there. And I think it makes a lot of sense to extend Rui. If you give him like a 2-year extension and it doesn't cross that threshold of like, I think it's like a 20% raise, that so long as you stay within that 20% raise, he can still be trade eligible right away. That I think would be the goal for the Lakers, is to extend him by a couple of years, give him that stability that he's probably looking for, make it at a reasonable enough number to where he isn't, it's not going to be at a crazy raise, but it will be at a decent number so that both parties walk away from those negotiations feeling pretty good about it. I think it's actually harder to trade Rui on an expiring contract this year than it would be to trade him on a contract with like 1 or 2 years attached to it or with an extension coming. I know that, teams prefer to have the flexibility and stuff like that. But when you trade for a player like Rui, who is immediately expecting to be paid, then that just kind of adds some stress to your books on top of it. So I think, and it wouldn't surprise me if at some point between now and whenever Rui can sign his extension, he signs some type of a deal. It's like a 2-year extension for roughly the same amount of money that he's making right now. And he remains trade eligible. I think that's probably how this plays out. But we'll see. But all right, that's the last thing on my docket as far as things that I wanted to talk about from this press conference. I thought it was a really interesting press conference. I thought it was interesting that they tried to say nothing, but in trying a little too hard to say nothing, kind of said the thing. In some moments, I thought that it was good to see that, Rob was kind of nailed down and made to say, yeah, we want LeBron here for as long as he wants to be here. I really liked JJ Redick's answer about utility plays and getting all 3 of their best players involved in as many sets as they can, or at least a few sets going into the season. I thought overall it was a really good, solid press conference from these guys, and really does kind of, lay the groundwork and lay the foundation for hopefully a really good, productive media day on Monday, and then a really good, productive training camp kicking off on Tuesday. This has been fun. Let me know what you guys think about the playback. Hit me up on Twitter and hit me with, we also have a Discord. Hit me in the Discord and let me know what you thought about this kind of simulcast or streaming option. And we'll see if we can continue to do more of these in the future. But until next time, until the next time you guys hear from me, which will be, I'm taking tomorrow off. It's the last Friday off that I get to take for a little bit, I would imagine. Until the next time you guys hear from me, which is probably going to be Sunday, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you on Sunday. Have a good one, everybody.